You know, if you go hunting, you get a map, you figure out where you're going to go, you look at the terrain, you look at the ground, you figure out where you're going to be, you know where the private property is. These people don't do that. They go out and they point their two wheels wherever they want to go. And of course, because they can go anywhere.
You know, without some sort of deterrents that are beyond this, they'll just continue to drive around whatever barriers are put up.
And what I'm saying is it's time for us to protect our public lands, both for ourselves and for those who come after us.
This is the upper Rogue River in the Rogue River-Siskiyou National Forest. This is a forest which encompasses a good share of southwest Oregon. The river is under threat. There's no question about that. There's heavy pressure, fishing pressure. There's heavy pressure from all users, including ATV users, OHV users. And the off-road abuse that is going on in this forest does contribute to siltation, does contribute to pollution in the water, and that impacts salmon runs, it impacts steelhead runs, and it impacts the entire river system, even the water we drink. Teddy Roosevelt and many other conservationists said that we inherited a great treasure in America. The landscape behind me is absolutely a great treasure. But they also charged us with improving what we've inherited and to hand down something that is even better than when we received it. So it is incumbent upon us to hand this treasure down to future generations. We've enjoyed it. We're just passing through. We can't take it with us. We won't take it with us. So our choice is, do we abuse it or do we enhance it and improve it and conserve it?
Most of my bad experiences with travel on the river have been primarily with jet boats coming through and tearing up the water, tearing up salmon beds, really just kind of like disturbing the river itself. As for more road travel and road vehicle travel, the biggest issue that we face here on the river is sedimentation from increased erosion due to off-road vehicles. And so maintaining some sort of a plan to reduce that would make a huge impact, because when the salmon come up or the steelhead come up to spawn, and especially in the side tributaries, and they go to their bed and it's covered in silt, they can no longer spawn there. They don't have that habitat that they need.
We're hiking near the Oregon-California border. My companions are David Callahan of the Applegate Trails Association on the left, and George Sexton, Conservation Director of KS Wild, on the right. Our destination, Hinkle Lake Botanical Area.
Fantastic. Doesn't have any bullet holes in it. They'd cut the Forest Service lock, put their own on, and come up here and spend the weekend running around in the meadows, trashing things. So,
unfortunately, those few bad apples are not respecting the meadows. They aren't respecting the gate. And they aren't respecting the informational signs. And twice this summer, at least so far, they've driven around the gate on quads and then gone into the meadows to do damage. The only thing it's closed to is motorized destruction like we see here. And what happened is that a snag, a dead tree, fell across the old pathway, and unwilling to walk 15 minutes into the lake, the off-road vehicle guys blazed a trail around the snag. When we get up here, you'll see they actually cut down trees to facilitate their illegal motorized access, and you can see the damage that it's causing to soils in the ground cover and the erosion that is associated with the illegally cut trail, motorized trail that is.
Mother Nature was doing a really good job of naturally decommissioning this road by dropping two big old trees, snags, in the road back there. They went around that, but when they got in here, you can see how side hill it is. It's atrocious. But there was another chunk of Mother Nature's natural decommissioning going on there, so they just kept staying up on the side hill rather than cutting that out.
This little basin really is a life giver to a number of animals that make their homes here in the Siskiyous. And so what's happening with these off-road vehicle tracks is that you'll notice we're here in the driest part of the year in an extreme drought year. And the only standing water you see, the only water that's within our frame of vision, is within the off-road vehicle tracks. And that means that the tracks are intercepting and diverting that water that's supposed to keep the meadow alive. Just the forest transportation system, the 5,000 miles of road that they have, are chronic sediment producers into the Applegate water supply, into the whole watershed. And what happens is that these cut banks that are in the decomposed granitic and other sensitive soil types, every time that there's a rain or even a wind event, that decomposed granitic soil ends up coming into the ditches, into the culverts, and then it ends up in the streams and the creeks. And sediment pollution is one of the biggest aquatic health problems in the Rogue Siskiyou. It affects everything from fish to the food that fish eat. And so if we can help stabilize our transportation system, identify which roads are high priority for recreation and administrative need, put our limited tax dollars for road maintenance into those roads, and then stabilize and close the thousands of miles of old logging roads to nowhere, will really be doing the right thing by the rivers and streams and the fish and all of the riparian associated species that rely, including the humans, on clean water. And for folks to be unwilling to walk the 25 minutes to get here to this irreplaceable and fragile meadow, and instead, to take the quads and the four-wheel drive rigs and just drive them through the meadow because they want to bring a truckload worth of beer to the cabin, it's not respectful. And with the rights to visit your public lands comes the responsibility to protect them.
And what we'd like to see is roads that are very poorly maintained, that are failing. We'd like to see them closed rather than what we've seen here, which is they're actually just opened up another road right next to two other roads that are creating that much more destruction within the watershed. And they're not dealing with the incredible problem on the National Forest Road 011. They're actually opening up this whole area to ORV use, poaching, the erosion, destruction, instead of dealing with the original issue, which is that the National Forest 011 road is failing and needs to be dealt with right away.
Well, I think that they need to look at the roads that are the most primary use roads that either go through to a different place. So they're used as, these primary and even the secondary road systems, but these tertiary and these unit roads and like this that were used for either one little mining operation or one sort of a timber sale, that they should not have those roads open. And it's not some God-given right to keep those roads open for public use when they were just used for that one resource extractive practice at that time.
Access. If I have a mining claim in a remote location, access is one of my primary concerns as a miner. The question is, do I have a right to my claim regardless of whether there's an existing road, whether there's a maintained road, or whether I want to punch in my own road? And granted, these mining claims are often located on an endangered salmon habitat.
I don't see why we can't coexist, but a lot of the miners have really little to no respect, and that's not all miners, but a lot of them have little to no respect for the ecological value of what they're, or where they're operating. By them kicking up a lot of sediment and decreasing the fish numbers, it directly impacts my job as a fishing guide. It makes it harder for me to get my customers into fish. And especially in the last 5 years with California closing their suction dredge mining ability, we also have a lot of suction dredge miners who've now moved up into our territory and just increased the number of people who are using our river systems and our tributary systems for mining gold specifically. and very little management or enforcement happening there. You have a lot of small tributaries that directly feed into the Rogue River that have zero to no management of the mining and are covered in miners in some areas.
And so once again, it comes back around to ethics. And the reason why these issues come up, and the reason why the conservation community kind of feels like they have to step forward in this, is because of the misuse of that ethic.
These fences were erected to prevent OHV abuse and to save rare plants found only here in the $8 Mountain Botanical Area near the wild and scenic Illinois River.
Where the problem is with vehicles is vehicles will drive out into these and the tires will punch through that hardpan, and that will cause a permanent drying and loss of habitat here, and you can't basically reverse it.
OHVs churned this sensitive meadow into a sea of mud, completely changing the habitat before a fence was erected to keep them out. The ground hard pan was broken by the OHVs, and the meadow drained, then dried, leaving a different landscape. 6 years later, you can see the ruts. Private landowners are also not immune from abuse.
The thing that drives me nuts the most is the trespassers, the people who come through and either claim that this is an OHV area, or claim that the road is open, or claim that they're lost and they don't know where they are. And the thing that bothers me most about it is most of these people are not familiar with the backcountry. They don't know what it's like out here, and they don't prepare themselves. We've put up wires and signs and everything else. In Oregon, there's ORS 105.700, which is basically your trespass law. You know, if I ever catch one of these people and are able to get an identification from them, then it's a $1,000 civil fine and a $1,000 criminal fine. And I would press those charges. But you know, they don't even take off their helmets. You can't get a physical description. You can tell the sheriff it was a black and white motorcycle, you know, and you can't read that sticker. That sticker's about this big. There was an attempt. In fact, I asked Representative Peter Buckley last year, the state legislature, to propose a bill for visible identification. Representative Buckley came back to me and he said, "I cannot believe the pushback on this." Even a law enforcement officer from the coast, from the Florence area, said that it would not be a good idea, it would not be helpful to law enforcement. And I cannot believe that, because logically, if you can see the numbers, if you can read the ID on the vehicle, then you have a better chance of identifying who's breaking the law.
Sometimes I'm not a fan of the modern day technology, you know, the loss of privacy, etc. But I do think the modern technology has a place in the form of these cheap game cameras. Those can be set up on places where motorized vehicles are not supposed to be, and if camouflaged properly, can do a really good job of policing that road or that trail 24 hours a day. And frankly, the Forest Service nor the Bureau of Land Management have the kind of resources it takes to do what's needed, because there's just too many miles. So I wish they would employ more of those. It works. But the other problem is that if you had a game camera set up and here comes a motorcyclist or somebody on a four-wheeler, if he had on a full face helmet, you wouldn't be able to tell who he is. I mean, you could be looking at Darth Vader. You really don't know, because with the shield and all the way around the chin, you just don't know who you're talking to or who you can't identify them. And so we need to have legislation that means that all OHVs have visible ID, just like any vehicle would be going down any highway in America. You got to be able to tell who in the heck that person is. And so there's a limit with those game cameras, because until we get some sort of visible ID, it can be difficult to identify a particular OHV, you know, a four-wheeler, when you're talking about so many millions of those things out there.
We all have a right to use public lands. We don't have a right to trash them.
The biggest challenge, I want to say, would be just trying to get everybody to cooperate and take their trash home with them. A tremendous amount of trash buildup just from everyday use. People just walking away and just literally just leaving the trash. They'll get done day using and just walk away. There'll be a big pile of beer bottles or cans or baby diapers or plastic bags, whatever it is that they brought from home, and a lot of times they'll just get up and walk away from it. One of the things I really don't understand is they go down with a full ice chest and come back with an empty one, when it would be just as easy to throw it all on the ice chest and take it back home with them.
Living in the backcountry, a lot of privilege. You know, you spend most of your time living in a very natural surrounding. The sounds are natural. The ground is natural. The wildlife is natural. So you live with all these natural rhythms. It's a very healing thing. In fact, studies have shown that, particularly for veterans with PTSD, natural surroundings are very helpful to the healing process. It also comes with a lot of responsibilities. You know, I feel responsible for clean water in the creek. I feel responsible for making sure that the trees and everything else here is healthy. I live 20 minutes from the nearest town. So it is not an easy place to live. There are trade-offs, but what you get in return, the peace, the quiet, the settling of your soul is just invaluable. And particularly for a Vietnam veteran like myself, you know, this is the place that has helped me to heal, that has kept me from becoming a shootout at McDonald's or a bundle of blankets in a downtown doorway.
We're standing next to one of the over 5,000 miles of road. Most of them were built for logging purposes that exist in the Rogue River-Siskiyou National Forest. And that's just one national forest. If you were to add up all of the miles of road on our national forest lands, it would exceed the mileage of our interstate highway system. But we don't have nearly the maintenance budget for the Forest Service logging roads as we do for other types of roads. A lot of folks will see a road like this or drive on a road like this and think that once you put the road in, that your obligations to the road, the financial burden to the taxpayer is over, that you've completed your task. But unfortunately, that's not the case. What I'm standing on right here is a culvert. And the idea is that this culvert will take water that comes down this ditch that was created by the road and funnel the water off of the road and away back down into the natural hydrological system, the creeks and streams. But the culverts don't clean themselves, and as you can see, we're in a part of the forest where there's a great deal of erosion taking place that's associated with this road. This slope is called a cut bank, and the cut bank was created to establish a place for this road to be in this mountainous terrain. So this cut bank is creating sediment and rockfall, which then either goes into the road or down through the culvert. To keep the road from blowing out and the culvert from clogging, the Forest Service has to routinely come here and clean out the culvert. That costs money, and we have to do that on every mile of open Forest Service road in the National Forest System, or else we're going to have road blowouts and even more impacts and damage to the streams and creeks from the erosion and the sediment. So with travel management, what the Forest Service is trying to do is to figure out how many miles of road can we afford to maintain? How many miles of road should American taxpayers be on the hook to do this kind of culvert maintenance, to do the brushing that's occurred along this road so that there's safe sight distances, and to do sort of the spot repairs and grading that has to occur for you to actually be able to take your car on this in a safe fashion and to reduce the environmental impacts, particularly to water, of this massive network of logging roads that exists on our forests. So through travel management, the Forest Service is working with the public to find out which roads are important to you, which roads are important for your recreational experiences, to get to a trailhead or your hunting spot or your fishing hole, and which roads are important to the Forest Service for administering the forest, for doing maintenance and all the other things that the Forest Service does, timber, cattle, etc. So trying to identify those roads that are important to have over time, and then trying to focus the limited taxpayer maintenance dollars on those roads. So what are we going to do with all the other roads, the roads to nowhere that are not needed for recreation or administrative purposes for the Forest Service? Those are the roads where we can really help the taxpayer out by saying we don't have to maintain every road that's a dead-end logging road to nowhere. Some of the roads, we need to put them to bed and get them back in a forested condition. So it's good for wildlife, it's good for watersheds, it's good for taxpayers.